So today we need to talk about how do you overcome the opposite appearing in your 3D reality when you're manifesting. How do you overcome obstacles as they appear in your 3D when you're manifesting? Because I know this affects so many of you. It's a very common part of the manifesting process that you are intending one thing. This is your manifestation over here that you're intending, you're practicing embodying, but then out here in the 3D, it is literally showing you the opposite. And a lot of you struggle with that. It's totally human to struggle with that. But today we're going to get deeper into how not to struggle with it. And I'm going to read another story from Neville Goddard to really help drive this home. Last week, we went into a little bit of Neville Goddard text and Neville Goddard stories. And I know that that really helped you guys realize that what he is saying in his sometimes old-timey language still applies to what you need to do today. So we're going to go into another story of his today. We're going to decipher it. We're going to make it real world applicable to you today in your life. And it's really going to help you trust what I've been saying to you guys a lot. I have told you many times that you need to accept the current 3D. You need to be non-resistant to the current 3D. But ironically, a lot of you resist the idea of non-resistance. And a lot of it isn't your fault. A lot of you have gotten faulty programming from other manifestation coaches about almost being encouraged to be resistant to the 3D, which is like, oh my God, I hate that, because that's only backfiring on you. So please stop being resistant to your current 3D reality. Please stop saying that phrase, this is not my reality, to things in your 3D. That is resistance, and that's not helping you. But anyway, we'll probably get to that more later, but I go on a lot of tangents, so we'll see if I circle back. But just accept that it's not a helpful phrase. Instead, you could say something like, I accept that this is appearing right now, but I don't really care. I don't really care that it's happening. It doesn't bother me. It doesn't trigger me. I don't care. That's a better way to do that. Okay, so before we get into it, I'm going to read you the story, but before we do, I will quickly introduce myself to any of you who don't know me yet. My name is Genevieve, so I'm here to help you embody your manifestation in a really healthy way. Manifestation should be psychologically healthy and spiritually healthy, and that's how it is most effective. So I'm here to help you with that. If you want to work with me, there's all kinds of ways to do that. You can do courses. All the links to the courses are down below. Also, the links to do private coaching with me are down below. The membership program is down below. You can join the platinum tier of the membership program to do group coaching with me every month. So anyway, just check out all the options down below. And if you don't do any of that, because of course you don't have to, it's no pressure, it's just an option, you can like this video and subscribe to my channel. Okay, let's get into this. So what I'm going to read to you today is a pretty common story that Neville would tell about himself in a lot of his lectures. This was one of his particular success stories that he liked to tell a lot. So I'm just going to read to you a version of the success story that I found online, and then we're going to talk about it after and how it applies to overcoming obstacles in the 3D and how to deal with the 3D when it's showing you the opposite. So here we go. Back in 1943, when I came out of the army, I was looking for an apartment. My wife and I had determined how much we were going to pay for it, but when we found the right apartment, the rent was more than we had planned to pay. Realizing this, my wife said, "Well, that's not demonstrating the principle, is it?" I said nothing. I simply paid the months of September and October, but when I went to pay the November rent, the manager said, "I have an apology to make to you." An authority of the city came in and looked over my books. He discovered that the apartment you have was formerly rented for less. Then he quoted the new rent figure to me, which was the dollar amount that I had originally chosen to pay. It took me 3 months of being faithful to what I had imagined I was paying, even though during that time I was paying more. But since the reduced rent was retroactive to the day I moved in, I got it all back at the beginning of the 3rd month. I had committed myself in my imagination to what I was going to pay. I went looking, and because I was going to pay more in the property manager's eyes, he gave me all kinds of concessions he would not have done had I paid him what the former tenant did. First of all, he allowed us to pick out the wallpaper, the colors, and rooms we wanted painted. He even built a bookshelf for me, which covered an entire wall for all my books. He did everything I wanted, but if I had gone in there and gotten the rent for the amount I said I would pay, he would not have built the bookcase for me, given me the wallpaper, or painted the entire apartment to my specifications. Only then was the rent reduced to the amount I had imagined it to be, and we remained there for almost 14 years. So I love this particular story of Neville's because it looks like he was failing. Like on the surface and from the outside, it looked like he was not manifesting well. It looked like, yep, you didn't do it, dude. Even his wife said, I guess this isn't following the principle then. You know, we had decided that we were going to manifest, that we were only going to pay this much money, and guess that's not working. So even his wife reacted to the 3D and kind of gave up. But Neville, I love that he had that line in there that said, I did nothing. I've noticed that that is a common phrase that Neville uses to refer to non-resistance, that when something happens in the 3D that does not match your wish fulfilled, what do? You literally just do nothing. You don't react, you don't argue, you don't push, you don't cry, you don't give up, you just do nothing. So again, it looked like his manifestation was failing. As I said, even his wife had like kind of given up on it. But even though he was physically paying more rent, he had to pay, like he said, September and October, he was paying higher rent than he ever intended to pay for that apartment. But he just, in a very accepting and non-resistant way, just paid the rent. He just did what he was asked to do by that current 3D. He didn't fight the current 3D. He didn't resist the current 3D. He just accepted it and allowed it. But in his imagination, in his internal knowing, he stayed easily stable in the wish fulfilled. He didn't let the 3D rock him, even though it was blatantly doing the opposite of what he was intending. He was just like, whatever, I guess this is just a part of the bridge of incidents. I can't see with the perspective that big G God has why things are happening exactly this way, but I'm just gonna trust the process that all of this must be a part of the bridge of incidents, and so I'm just gonna not fight the current 3D. I'm going to accept it. I'm not going to get mad at it. I'm not going to get all emotional about it. I'm not going to tell myself, oh my God, manifestation doesn't work and everything's failing. I am just going to accept it and just do what I have to do in this current 3D. This is something that so many of you guys really struggle with. And as I said earlier, it's very human to struggle with this. This skill that he really shows and exemplifies in that story is a very mature skill. And this is why manifestation is a spiritual practice, because it takes mastery to get to the point that he was at, where you truly can be just like totally non-resistant to your current 3D. It's a skill to remain that relaxed and that confident and that trusting in your own energy and your own connection with God. It does take a lot of trust to develop that kind of patience and mastery and not being so triggered all the time. So I'm saying that because I want you to be patient with yourself, that if you are still being triggered by your 3D, that is just a part of the process, and all you have to do is also be non-resistant to your triggers. Don't judge yourself for being triggered about the current 3D if you are still triggered. Don't try to fight it. Don't try to repress it. These are the things I say all the time. Instead, just love the emotion that you're having. And this is something I've talked about so often. I'm not even going to go into this emotional thing in this video. Just check the other videos for this. But bottom line is, do not resist anything that comes up for you during your manifestation process. The goal is that you are simply remaining faithful to knowing you're on the right path no matter what happens, especially in the 3D. If the 3D throws you a curveball, which it will, especially when you're manifesting big stuff or stuff that's like a big paradigm shift to you, often the 3D throws you a lot of curveballs. That's kind of a part of the fun mystery of all this manifesting stuff, is you don't really know what the bridge of incidents is actually going to be. You don't know what's going to happen next and then next, and like what's going to really be that path that brings you to the physical fulfillment of your desire. But you always have to trust that you are on the path. You cannot betray yourself and decide, oh, well, it didn't work. I guess I'm bad at manifesting. Like, imagine if Neville had reacted that way. Like, after they found the apartment that they wanted, but then realized, oh shoot, we actually do need to pay more than what we were manifesting to pay. Imagine if he just got really hard on himself and was like, oh my God, I can't believe I can't manifest this. Why did this happen? What did I do wrong? Oh my gosh. Like, imagine if Neville Goddard did all that. That would just be crazy. But that's what a lot of you guys do. And again, I'm not saying that to judge you. It's more, again, just to say that's a human thing to do. But it's just showing you need to just trust the process, trust yourself, and keep this so simple, keep it so light that you are just always going to go back to knowing that everything is working out for you. That nothing that happens in this world is actually against you, because that's all what's really going on. If you're seeing something happen in the 3D, no matter what it is, and you are saying, oh, because that thing happened, my wish fulfilled has been taken away from me, you are the only one giving it that meaning. Everything that happens in 3D reality is meaningless. It's benign until you give it a negative meaning. So this is why you are responsible as the operant power for watching, what do you give life to? What do you give meaning to? What are you looking at in your reality and being like, oh, that wasn't supposed to happen. I don't like that that's happening. How do I stop that from happening? This thing happening means that I'm not getting what I want. You can't do that. You are your own block when you give things in your life negative meanings. And again, I get that it takes practice to stop reacting so much to all the things that are happening in this world. But as you know, manifestation is a paradox, and that when you stop reacting to the thing you used to react the most to, and you become so neutral to it, you're so non-resistant to it, you're so just like allowing of whatever that thing is over there, you don't care anymore. It's just a neutral thing to you now. That, ironically, is when everything starts to shift, and that old circumstance that you used to judge finally falls away, and the new thing comes in, all because you dropped your resistance, and instead you just allowed things to happen. Like Neville Goddard, he just allowed himself to keep paying the higher rent. He wasn't freaking out about it. He stayed faithful internally to what was really going on. And then the part of the story that I really love, that really drives home how sacred your bridge of incidents is, and how you don't know how things are working out in your favor, even things that initially look negative, how actually those negative things are still working out in your favor, is how he told at the end of the story. And I know it was worded kind of weird in that paragraph, but what he was saying at the end is that because the property manager knew that he was charging Neville and his wife a higher rent, the property manager probably felt a little bit of guilt. And so the property manager did all this extra stuff for them, like painting their walls and building the bookshelf and stuff. And like Neville said, that property manager would not have given them so many extra concessions, extra stuff for their apartment, had the property manager not felt a little bit guilty about initially charging them more rent. So as you can see, like when you get to your end, like when your manifestations do physically materialize to the fullness of your wish fulfilled, only then do you really have the perspective to look back and see, oh, I see why this happened, and then this happened, and then this happened. And this is why I say that Big G God has a higher intelligence about the how and when than you do. You have a singular egoic human perception, and your human perception has no idea what is the best path to make your wish fulfilled happen in the physical world. Only Big G God has that perspective to see, oh, this should happen first, and then this should happen, so that's what's gonna happen for them. And even though that first thing looks like, oh, this is bad, like for example, it might look really bad that you get fired from your job. And this is a common thing that can happen to people. You start manifesting and then boom, you get fired from your job. And that looks really bad. That can make you feel like, okay, obviously manifesting doesn't work, or I'm doing something wrong, because why would I lose my job after I start manifesting? And it's because for a lot of mysterious reasons, that's the first step that needs to happen for you to be led to either a better job or a different opportunity, or maybe a move you need to make, or maybe different group of people you need. There's a million different reasons why the XYZ needs to fall away from you, so that then you can be led to this thing over here. And again, you don't have the human perspective to see why that has to happen. And this also applies to relationships, where sometimes a relationship needs to fall apart before it can come back together in a healthy way, or sometimes two people need to do some exploring on their own separately so they can each grow. And you need to humble yourself to be like, okay, if my relationship's going to come back together, or if I'm going to manifest a new relationship, I have to just truly trust that we're going to be brought back together at the right time, or I'm going to meet somebody else at the right time. I just have to trust whatever I'm manifesting. I have to trust that each thing that happens on the bridge of incidents is happening for a reason that at the end of this, I'll be able to look back and see, oh, that was actually for my greater good. Like in Neville's story, him paying that higher rent initially, that was actually to his benefit, but he wasn't able to really see that while it was happening, because while it was happening, it just looked like an inconvenience. Like, oh, I'm paying higher rent when I shouldn't be. This is annoying. But actually, at the end, when everything got resolved, he was like, oh, so I actually got an even better deal because I got that money that I paid back, because as he said, he was reimbursed for the higher rent that he paid, and he got all this extra stuff for his apartment. So again, you really just have to trust that everything really is working in your favor, even the negative stuff, even the stuff that looks bad. But what can cause things to really halt or really like not move forward is, again, your judgment of the 3D. And this is why there's no one to change but self. There's nothing going on out here you need to worry about or change. You have to change your internal perceptions of the world. You have to change, how are you judging the world? How are you judging people in your life? How are you judging circumstances in your life? Because you are the only thing that needs to change. Your perceptions, the meanings that you give things. When you genuinely start to see things differently and react to things differently and embody this different version of you that knows that you're loved no matter what and knows that things are working out for you no matter what, and therefore you're not really that bothered by this like weird inconvenient thing. Instead, you can just trust, okay, this is a weird inconvenient thing that's happening here. You can acknowledge that. As I said earlier, like, do acknowledge it and don't say the things, so I am coming full circle. See, I told you I would. You can acknowledge that the things that are inconvenient in your life, you can say, yeah, that's inconvenient. But don't look at that thing and be like, oh no, that's not my reality, and be afraid of it. That is reacting. This is why I don't like that phrase, this is not my reality, like when you're seeing something in the 3D, because it's like used from an energy of avoidance. Like most people, when they're saying that, I've noticed, they're using it from this place of fearful avoidance. Like, oh, I just don't want that to happen. I can't look at it. I don't want to see it. I'm just going to say, oh, it's not my reality. It's not my reality. And all that is resistance energy. So remember, we're being totally non-resistant. We're being totally just accepting and allowing of whatever the 3D is playing out. We're acknowledging that, sure, it's annoying, but we're also saying it is also temporary. And with time, you'll probably look back on that event or that circumstance or that person or whatever, and you'll be like, I see why that needed to happen in my life at that time, because now I've come full circle from it. I learned some stuff from it. You probably also just like gain things you didn't even know at the time, but later you realize you did gain something from that thing, whatever it was that happened. Nothing is ever lost to a 3D thing. Everything is working for you, not against you, even the random negative things. But again, what is so imperative is that you know that, because if you don't hold on to the knowing of what I just said, that everything really is working for you and not against you, if you don't trust that and know that and embody that knowing, then yeah, as I said, you can kind of stall out, because you are stalling yourself by continually staying in this loop of reacting at the same thing over and over again. Because when you react at the same thing over and over again, you're keeping that thing important. You're keeping the loop going because you keep focusing on it and reacting to it and then focusing on it and then reacting to it. And so therefore nothing can move on, because you're just like stuck in that loop, continually reacting in the same way to the same thing. So instead you have to be like, you know what? Done reacting to you over here. I'm just going to accept you. I'm just going to accept that you're here and you're not a threat to me, even though that's very different for me to practice that. And I get it first. It's going to feel weird to accept the things in your life that you used to be like, oh, no, I'll never accept that. I can never allow that. But again, it's the biggest paradox that when you finally just accept it and realize it's not a big deal, I'm not going to fight it anymore, I'm not going to react to it anymore, that is when the mystery magic of all of this just clicks into place and things really start moving and the bridge of incidents develops further and things develop more and actual wish fulfilled comes into your life. So I hope this really drove home today how important acceptance and allowance and non-resistance is, because as I said earlier, I feel like there's a lot of coaches who are almost encouraging you to be resistant to your current reality, and it's not helping you. Like being delusional or avoidant or saying this is not my reality, Neville Goddard did not do that shit. He very much accepted whatever the 3D handed him. He humbly accepted it and stayed faithful internally to still knowing his end was his end, but he didn't react in that weird egoic way to the 3D. He just accepted it and made it not a big deal and just kept going on with his life and going on with his internal knowing. And eventually it clicked in and worked. So that's really what I want you to do, is let go of any part of you that is thinking that resistance of your 3D is somehow still working for you, because in fact, it is the opposite. It is the thing that's keeping you stuck. Resistance of your 3D is what is keeping you stuck. So let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are, what your questions are with all of this. If you have any questions that I feel would be helpful for the wider audience to hear, I might make a video out of your question and answer it. So just let me know your thoughts. As always, I'm really proud of you guys for being here and for growing as manifestors and really taking this seriously for yourself, because this is really a self-development thing. The physical manifestations that we get are really an after effect symptom of this deeper showing up for your true self. So that should be kind of your intention that you come back to a lot, is really, this is partly why the 3D doesn't matter, because it's like, this isn't about the 3D. This is about me knowing that I'm loved and empowered and that everything is working out for me no matter what. And then the symptoms of that are that manifestation just clicks into place so well. So thank you guys for being here, and I will see you guys in my next video. All right, bye.